Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council meeting of November 12, 2013. I'd like to thank the Garden Club for the beautiful arrangement they always provide for our meetings. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Salazar.
Here.
Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Here.
Mayor Ruane.
Here.
Councilmember Medina.
Here.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Here.
Carrie Burns, would you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a few announcements this evening. There will not be a City Council meeting on December 24th, the fourth Tuesday in December. The only regular City Council meeting in December will be held on December 10th, 2013. There will be a special meeting for the purpose of installing newly elected city officials on Tuesday, December 3rd, 2013, right here at 7:30 p.m. And I'd also like to announce that this will be the last City Council meeting for our outgoing Finance Director, Kim Duran. She will be working for the City of Auburn. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge her. She'll be leaving our city after tonight for another opportunity in, I believe it is Auburn, right, Kim? Yes. I want to thank Kim, we all do, for your 8 years of service to San Bruno. I know I speak for the entire City Council in expressing our appreciation for your capable leadership of the Finance Department, your thoughtful and thorough analysis of many difficult financial situations, your wise recommendations, and your always good-natured effort to make the numbers interesting. We will all miss you very, very much. Kim, would you like to say something?
I've never. Is that on? I would just like to say a few words. I don't say much unless it's involving numbers, but 8.5 years here, I've had a tremendous experience. I've had some fabulous opportunities, and I really couldn't have asked for much more for the last 8.5 years other than to work with the group of people that I've had the opportunity to work with, and I'm extremely grateful to all of you, and especially to our city manager for the opportunities that she's given to me and the opportunity to step up to be finance director for the last 2 years. So I greatly appreciate that, and I will very much miss being here every day, but we'll continue to keep San Bruno as part of my extended family. So thank you.
Thank you, and good luck to you and your family. We do have a few presentations this evening. The first is to present a 25-year service award to Ray Perkins, Cable Television Department. And let me tell you a little bit about Ray. Ray started working for San Bruno Cable in 1988. Ray worked for 10 years as a field technician visiting customer homes in San Bruno for cable installations and service calls. When the need arose to oversee the contractors building the new system in 1997, Ray stepped up and took on that role, monitoring their progress and acting as liaison between the contractors and the residents. Later, he was responsible for plant design for the Marisol project and assisted in the Crossings project design. Since the deployment of cable's digital services in 2001 and the large number of converter boxes purchased, Ray has served as the department's warehouseman, keeping inventory, ordering supplies, assisting staff with digital converter issues, and handling quality control of the digital equipment used by customers. With great pride, we recognize Ray Perkins for his 25 years of service to this community. Ray?
I was going to actually say everything you just said. So let me just say this real quick. The very first person that I spoke with and shook their hand when I came for my interview was Rico Medina. You probably don't remember me, but I was coming to City Hall that night for my interview, and you were the very first person to introduce yourselves. Thank you very much for that. It made me very comfortable with that big smile, and trying not to smile is very hard to hold it in. I'd like to say thanks to actually 4 individuals that made it very comfortable for me here. Steve Urpel, office manager, who actually was able to get me to come here tonight, and I really appreciate that. And Al Johnson, a very dear friend. I met Al before he came to the family of San Bruno, and he was the one who gave me the opportunity to supervise the contractors that came through our city. And Robert Miguel, who, a dear friend also, gave me the opportunity to become the warehouse and the technician for all of our communication devices that we use in our city today. And a very dear friend who, if it wasn't for him, none of this would have taken place today, which is Dave Thomas. He gave me the opportunity to come here to San Bruno, and I've been loyal to that individual ever since. And I really appreciate that, along with everyone else who I just mentioned. So thank you all for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to hold this in. It's an honor, and I'm very happy that you're all here tonight with me. Thank you, Al Johnson. I appreciate it.
Rico?
Through the chair. Ray, thank you very much for saying that. And it's been 25 years, but you make an impression then and you make an impression now. You've always had class, and thank you for all the years of service.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next presentation is receive a Grand Boulevard Initiative Award for the City of San Bruno's Transit Corridors Plan. This past week, the City of San Bruno was presented with a 2013 Grand Boulevard Initiative Award for its San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan. The award was presented by the sponsors of the Grand Boulevard Initiative to recognize plans and projects on the El Camino Real corridor that align with the vision and guiding principles of the Grand Boulevard Initiative to improve the performance, safety, and aesthetics of the El Camino Real corridor between San Jose and San Francisco. The San Bruno Transit Corridors Plan was adopted by the City Council in February of this year after several years of planning and community engagement. The plan expresses the community's vision for the future of San Bruno's key street corridors, including El Camino Real and San Mateo Avenue, and provides a foundation for building that future. 2014 is the city's 100-year anniversary, and we are excited about launching the next phase of our growth. The city will have a new Caltrain station opening next year, and together with the BART station, we expect great opportunities for transit-oriented development. The corridor plan should result in a more vibrant El Camino Real corridor in downtown, more pedestrian-friendly streets and walking connections to the downtown, Caltrain station, and BART, exciting new mixed-use commercial and housing developments, and pocket parks, plazas, and recreational amenities for the enjoyment of our public. On behalf of the City of San Bruno, I'd like to thank the Grand Boulevard Initiative sponsors for the award and look forward to working together to realize this exciting transformation to our community and our region. And this is our award. So I received it on behalf of the city just last week in the city of Redwood City. Redwood City. I went to a lot of cities last week. Anyway, thank you very much, and thank you to the current and previous community development staff for working so very, very hard in making this happen. It was a lot of work and a lot of meetings. Ken?
I've been proud from day one, ever since the Grand Boulevard was initiated, and I've been the representative on the task force, and unfortunately I wasn't able to attend the meeting because I needed to get out of town after that election. So I want to thank the mayor for attending, and I believe community development director. I could not have been prouder of this city for what we've done, and we are a shining star in the Grand Boulevard Initiative, even before Grand Boulevard was initiated. So what we've done at the crossings, what we've done at Tan Fran, what we're doing just along the median strips is a model for the other cities on how to utilize the Grand Boulevard, and I think they're looking to us, and I'm very proud of that.
Great, thank you. We're going to receive an award from the San Mateo County Trial Lawyers Association, recognizing the City of San Bruno's Fire Department as 2013 Public Safety Officers of the Year.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, since the title has the word lawyers in it, I'll say a couple of words. Every year, an organization of which I used to be a member before coming to the city honors a Peace Officer of the Year for their exemplary service to the community. It's just been a tradition and one of their awards they've done for many, many years. And this year, the city was pleased, surprised, and impressed to hear that the Trial Lawyers Organization had chosen the City of San Bruno Fire Department collectively to receive that award instead of giving it to one particular individual. So that award was presented at a dinner at which over 200 people were in attendance, including all of the sitting, or most, if not all, of the sitting judges in San Mateo Superior Court, as well as a number of the retired judges as well. And Chief Lattice was there. The award was accepted by retired Fire Chief Dennis Haig, and Ron Levezzo, one of the firefighters, said a few words on behalf of the department in accepting that award. What was remarkable about the presentation was that a couple of the other recipients of other awards that were given out by the organization, for example, for the best judge of the year, those kinds of things, all of those individuals referred specifically to the honor and bravery of the San Bruno Fire Department in responding to the disaster. And that was it was very touching to hear that. So I know that Chief Lattice wanted to be here. He has a plaque that says and shows what the award is, but he's not here at the moment, so we thought we'd just give you a quick rundown of what it was.
And Mr. Mayor, if I might make one additional comment to that which our city attorney has made, is you might wonder, or the public may wonder, why is the Trial Lawyers Association giving an award to a public safety officer, or in this case, an entire public safety department? And the reason is that in this particular case, is that like many others in our regional community, there is a strong understanding of the disaster that occurred here in San Bruno in 2010 and the ramifications that it had on any numbers of individuals, not only inside of our community but outside of our community, in this case the trial lawyers, who have been instrumental, many among them, in working with individuals within the affected neighborhood who were directly impacted by the disaster and assisting them in resolving their various legal matters. So this is but one of many of the sort of spillover effects, if you will, of the broad reach that the incident has had, and once again, well-deserved recognition on the part of our fire department for their heroic and obviously very dedicated service to the residents of San Bruno.
Thank you, and thank the trial lawyers. Now we're going to receive a presentation from the Peninsula Healthcare District. Cheryl.
My name is Cheryl Fama, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Peninsula Healthcare District, and I want to thank you for this opportunity this evening to update you on the property development activities of the Peninsula Healthcare District. On behalf of all of our residents that we share, the Peninsula Healthcare District Board is responsible for nearly 30 acres of prime real estate on the Mid-Peninsula. This is an aerial photo that shows you our land. This is right here is about 29 acres, and there's one little acre over there. 21 of those acres are under a 50-year lease agreement with Sutter Health and Mills Peninsula Health Services. It's the home of that beautiful brand new $650 million medical center, which our board takes great pride in claiming that, in fact, we kept that district land in the hands of the community, had a $650 million hospital built on our land at no cost to the taxpayer, and we're proud of that. The other 9 acres have been subject to nearly 3 years of research by our board to determine what's the best and highest use to serve the health needs of our community. That research included everything from engaging experts on looking at national studies, healthcare service trends, local studies and demographics and the environment, the aging of our population, urban and development and economics experts, and then we drilled down even further into senior services and what are the trends in that arena today and for the future. We also conducted focus groups, and we also held town hall meetings. And the result, let's see here. On the 1 acre across the street from the hospital at the corner of Truesdale and Magnolia, we are well on our way, that's at 100% schematics, to build a 124-unit assisted living and memory care facility. Plans have been submitted to the city. We hope to break ground next summer. We hope to start admitting residents of the early part of 2016. And the district will own the land, the facility, and we've engaged Eschaton, which is a not-for-profit senior service operator that's more heavily in the Sacramento area, to be our operator over the immediate 5 years. So that's the 1 acre. But what about the rest? And again, I wanted to use a graphic representation of what we're talking about. So this light blue area is all of the land that the district owns that it's ready to develop. The dark blue area is under lease. The light blue is what we're going to develop. This funny little corner out there is kind of isolated right now, but it's just going to have to stay there, and we have plans for that. This is where that assisted living facility will be. And so what are we going to do with the remaining acres? Well, let me show you what we've got planned. I've got too many little gadgets here. There you go. I know you can't read what's on there, but let me tell you what you're looking at. We are hoping to build and planning to build residential all along Marco Polo, 70,000 square feet of office space. This is our swing space. We're still studying whether we need more office or whether we need more senior housing. And this complex in here will be some combination of skilled nursing or assisted living, or we're really exploring a new model called the small group home model or the greenhouse project, which is kind of the new wave of how do you take care of skilled nursing, acute rehab in a more home-like setting. This project has been 10 years in operation around the country and actually has evidence-based findings and outcomes that show that whether they have dementia, whether it's a post-hospital recovery, whether it's post-stroke, young person recovering, or a senior, you can, in small group homes, get them better faster, improve the quality of life, and maybe the need for skilled nursing beds as we know it will no longer exist. So we're well on our way to work with the City of Burlingame. We did bring the general high-level concept to a joint public meeting of the Council and the Planning Commission. They give us the thumbs up to keep working on it and bring to them a package of services with the densities, zoning, codes, etc., so we can get the entitlements we need to move forward. So we're excited about this new development for our community. While it's located in Burlingame, that's where the land happens to be, but we see it as something that really will address the needs of our community, both mid-peninsula, the whole peninsula, and the Bay Area. So our next steps are to do further definition of each building, kind of resolve our schematics and get ready to submit our EIR and CEQA documents, and we have that as a goal the early part of 2014. So with that, I would like to thank you again for the opportunity. I want to make ourselves available to you to stay on top of our progress, both on our website, phone number, drop by and see us, because until we tear that building down, I'm still sitting in it at 1600 Truesdale, and we'd be happy to present again. So thank you for the time, and I also want to call your attention to the latest edition of our newsletter, which is hot off the press in the back. And I wasn't planning to announce this when we booked this little time on your agenda, but you probably are all aware one of my board members got elected to the San Mateo City Council. So we now have our application process open, and we'd love to have somebody from San Bruno on our board. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Any questions for Cheryl? Yeah, you have made a beautiful facility, and it's only going to get better. It's great, and really serves the community well. Thank you very much. And now we're going to receive a presentation from Caltrain Joint Powers Board on the final design of improvements along First Avenue on the east side of the grade separation structure.
Sorry for the delay. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I will be presenting specifically on the final design of the improvements on the east side, including the parking that we discussed last time and some of the additional features we've been working with the city. So, real quickly, update on the street parking at First Avenue. Last time we presented, this is a conceptual design. I have to check with my designers. I'm back to present a final carved in stone variant of that. And then east side improvements, including some of the planting improvements. During a September outreach meeting, there were some questions that came out from the community regarding parking along First Avenue. I then presented to the council, and some of those concerns were reiterated. So we went back to our design team and came up.
That was very nicely put.
I wasn't sure which way I was going to go with that, but so we went back to the design team and we spoke with city staff and sort of put our heads together to see what we could do to capture back some of the parking along First Ave. Presented in September a tentative plan, but my designers were still hedging their bets on checking some last minute stuff, which they've now done, and so I'm here to present the final design to you tonight. Just to be clear, the area we're talking about is along First Avenue. There's Melody Toyota right off on the corner here, and the new Caltrain station will be going off in this portion to the top right of the figure. So the area in question that was in conflict, that accounted for most of the loss of parking along First Avenue, was due to this bulb out in the sidewalk. So the current curb line along First Avenue is doing this, and the contract plans currently call for the sidewalk to be recessed, the road to be narrowed, and for us to lose a little bit of that width. The reason has to do with, there's a staircase here and a ramp which you can't quite see, and as you recall, all of that was sized for 4 tracks at one point. So again, the thought was 4 tracks plus staircase plus ramp plus parking plus street just didn't work. And so the thing we cut out was the parking. Well, now, 2013, we're not looking at 4 tracks anytime in the near future, so we went back and revisited it, and what we discovered is that we can actually push this curb line back and recapture some of that parking. So what it looks like is, this is the cul-de-sac up by Melody Toyota. These are the 18 spots that we mentioned last time that we were looking to recapture and add, and now I can definitively say that we're able to do that. So essentially, the curb line currently, as I showed, bulbed out in this area. It now will be flattened out to match almost exactly the same line as it extends up to Pine Street. And I'll go through some of those cross sections in more detail. So essentially, parking is saved up along First Ave. However, we still do lose spots where the bulb out is, as well as 1 spot each at the crosswalk. And then there's a couple extra here where First Avenue no longer exists, where it used to merge into San Mateo. And now just some of the improvements that we've developed for the east side. So again, this was a consequence of looking at this originally as a 2-track, 4-track variant design. And so this was an element that we didn't really focus on a lot when we were in 2009 in the design frame. But the idea was always that if we went with 2 tracks, that we would go back, we would talk with the city, and come up with a design that fit the city's needs along First Avenue. And here it is. So I've broken it down into 3 main elements. There's some enhanced planting that we've done at the Transit Center. There's the water feature at Posey Park, which I'm shamelessly inserting here, even though it's on the west side. And then there's the additional improvements along First Avenue itself, which are the sidewalk, the terraced planting, and some of the customized planning that we were able to work out with the city staff. So, in order, first we have the planting along the Transit Center. So this is the area at San Bruno and San Mateo, at that quadrant up by where you now see the new east elevator going in. So up in the corner right there That's the elevator tower that you see going up. The first lift has been poured. So what we did is we took a look at the area around this elevator as it transitions into the station, and we came up with a terraced planning sequence to sort of, again, break a little bit of the starkness of having this tall elevator tower and sort of terrace down. So here's a front view of it as it would appear from San Bruno. So as you're walking along San Bruno, the grade drops as you go into the underpass. Here's the elevator shown in gray, and here would be the staircase that would take you up to the platform level. Here, as promised, is the water feature at Posey Park. So this is a shot, this is a little bit of an aerial shot, but essentially this will be the new paving that will be going in starting end of next week in Posey Park. And the water feature, this is the ramp on this side and the staircase coming up to the station along here. Another shot of that showing the cascading effect of the water as it sort of slides down into those main pools, and then also the secondary cascading effect through these weirs here. So finally, these are the planting improvements that were worked out with the city along the east side, primarily on First Avenue, but up Angus as well as all the way up to San Mateo. So some of the main elements that were incorporated were additional and different kinds of street trees, improved planting. More specifically, the biggest change was the introduction of this terrace effect, so it sort of breaks the wall down rather than go wall straight to vertical planting. We've introduced this terrace element. And then the improved and widened sidewalks, which I will show you. So just generally, this is sort of what I mean by a terraced planter. So this is First Avenue. This is actually Artichoke Joe's parking. And obviously that's the grade sub. So what we have is various configurations, but they all equal some variant of sidewalk, street trees, planting strip, retaining wall, and planter with additional landscaping sort of flowing up into the retaining wall so that along First Avenue, rather than see the full height of the wall, what you in fact see is sort of a diminished vertical element there. So I'm going to break this into two main components, and that is north of Pine and south of Pine. And the reason I do it like this is because the order of those elements I described varies depending which side of Pine you're on. So north of Pine, what you have is you have a sidewalk immediately up against the curb line. Then you've got a planting strip that in this case includes street trees. Then you have this 3-foot wall followed by this sloped terrace with the planting. South of Pine, the order is reversed. It goes curb, street trees, 6-foot sidewalk, followed by a planter strip, followed by a 3-foot wall, followed by this 20-foot planter element. So the planter element, the terracing, doesn't really vary in width. It varies slightly, and I'll show you the two areas where it tapers. But in general, except the areas I'm about to show you, it's 20 feet. The sidewalk is, again, it widens at the crosswalks, but generally it's 6 feet. So a fairly wide sidewalk. And then the planter strip varies depending whether you're north or south. So you end up with a larger tree well section along the curb south of Pine with this 3-foot planter strip, and north of Pine, those two elements get combined into one wider planter strip, but also with the street trees. So the two areas I mentioned where what I just showed you is not correct are at Pine Street itself, where the sidewalk gets significantly wider. And this is because there is an ADA crossing at that location. So the sidewalk actually has to have a landing for the ramp. So just at the area at Pine, the sidewalk gets wider, and then it reverts to one of those two conditions I just showed you. And then the final area is at Angus itself, where the wall sort of returns and closes in on the grade step. So it is actually a 3D element. It doesn't just taper off. It returns and then ties into this wall, which is the edge of the grade step itself. So there's a visual of what it will look like. One element I just wanted to point out is the planting itself, the wall itself. Last time there was some confusion and caused by me because I showed two pictures, one with a nice smooth finish and one with a ashlar finish. In reaction to the concern over graffiti abatement, our designers have determined that the ashlar finish makes the most sense. It tends to discourage graffiti a little bit more than the smooth finish, and it also aesthetically works better because it fits exactly with what we're doing at the grade step itself. The pattern, and actually this one, the color isn't exactly correct, but the color will match the current grade step. So there'll be a little bit more continuity between the 3-foot wall and the full grade step itself. And then the final element that we worked closely with the city on was to customize the planting to fit exactly to the city of San Bruno specifications as to drought tolerant and plants that thrive in San Bruno's environment. So don't expect you to read every one of these, but I guess the gist of this slide is that we did work with the city. We did ensure that we tailor-made the planting to fit the city's needs, and we've provided an aesthetically pleasing, customized approach with some sort of curvilinear patterns so that the planting doesn't look like sort of a blocky kind of texture to it, but rather it sort of flows. And that section you see here, that black line, that's actually the wall. So one of the things we endeavor to do is to sort of merge the planting on both sides of the wall so there's a little bit of a feel of continuation so that some of the curvilinear patterns extend to both sides of the wall. And I'll take any questions anyone might have at this time.
Any questions? Ken?
Can you refresh our memory on what you came to us with in September? The negative, the amount of parking spaces that were removed, and so now we're still losing some.
We are, correct. So at First Avenue, which is the area I was just talking about, we were, which I think I have. So we had a net loss of 31 parking spaces. We're able to bring back 18 of those spots. However, there is still a net loss at First Avenue. And where that is it's the two I mentioned where the pedestrian crosswalk is. And then the rest of the loss are all because of this cul-de-sac and because there's no longer a cemetery there anymore. So unfortunately, we do still lose 13 spots, but we lose 13 spots on a street that isn't there anymore, associated with the area to the extreme north at Melody Toyota, which generally is not where the highest parking demand is. The highest parking demand seems
In the
to be
residences, yeah.
along the residential area,
Okay, thank you.
Irene?
I'm asking these questions to clarify what I understand. So I was there this evening on First Avenue and took some pictures, and I think a lot of the confusion that I had, besides the fact that originally you said we were going to lose all the parking on First on the east side, is that the pictures that, to me, that we had been looking at City Hall that were over there and that you reproduced on the presentation, it seemed as though the street itself would be wider and that the widening of it would accommodate the parking. But from what I saw and what I'm looking at and what I'm listening to, that's not what is happening. Is that correct?
That is correct. So First Avenue in general, First Avenue remains in the after condition the same width as it is today. It will have, in the after condition, it will have a sidewalk on the west side that it doesn't currently have. It'll have new curb, it'll have improved crossings, etc. But in general, the width that you see there today with the curb line is the width in the after condition. Now I say in general because everything I just said is not, as you recall, true at the north end of First Avenue. So what was happening was not so much that we were widening it on the south side, it was that we were narrowing it on the north side. And this was a consequence of sort of the 2-track, 4-track thing. But this, I call it a bulb out, but this sort of reduction in width that you see here in this slide, that actually was a constriction of what you see there today. So if you were to drive out there today, the curb line actually follows where my cursor is along this line. What we're essentially doing is returning it back to essentially the existing. It gets nominally wider in this area, but in general, it's approximately the same width.
Okay.
if that answers your question.
It does answer my question, but it brings up another question. It's a very narrow street. I know all the streets are narrow. I grew up down there.
Right.
I drive down there almost every day. Is there a reason that we can't make, or you, make the sidewalk not 6 feet, make it 4 feet, and just move it over 2 feet so we just have a little breathing room on the street? Or is that because that's Caltrain's right of way and that's yours and not ours? Or is because it's a done deal?
Right. So we didn't talk about right-of-way, and I probably should have mentioned that on this slide, but the right-of-way line is actually, that was one of the other reasons why this curb line got pushed in. It's because the JPB right-of-way line is actually roughly at the edge of the existing curb line. So to answer your question, yes, that is one of the main reasons, is that the width of the street today is essentially the width of the city's easement to use the street. So that was the main reason. There's some other trickle-on effects. If you make the street wider, it sort of pushes everything down the road. Not insurmountable ones, like you mentioned. You could do something like narrow the sidewalk. That would be one way you could do it. But the primary reason had to do with ownership and right-of-way issues.
Okay. Is it a big issue for you guys? Is it too late in the game to say anything? Is it?
So we are, in order to make this work, this portion would involve some sort of agreement between the JPB and the city of San Bruno to make this happen. So we would already have to sort of work together collaboratively to come up with a way to basically administratively allow for the JPB to maintain ownership, but the parking to be pushed into that area. Further up, I don't see there's no strong engineering reason. I mean, some of that curb line's already been poured, obviously, so that's one concern. But that is something we could look at, if that's a major concern. I mean,
It's not a major concern per se. I just think it's an opportunity. You haven't done part of it yet. It's an opportunity to make that place a little better and a little easier to drive down. A lot of people I know go down Angus. They avoid San Bruno Avenue and they go down Angus and turn left on First Avenue to go to avoid a lot of the traffic and all those things that are happening over there.
So I mean, in general, what I said is correct, but when you start, I mean, the devil is always in the details, and some of these points are carved in stone. So, for instance, up by Angus, there's areas where we don't really have much choice over the width. So my guess is, I mean, I could certainly have my designer look at it. My guess is when we started to delve down further, what would likely happen is we could, from an engineering point of view, say, yeah, we can widen it here, but not here, here, but not here. And my concern is, it's sort of a point of diminishing return, right? You have a street that's doing this. It's one thing to do that to accommodate parking, because you can have localized parking. But as far as through traffic, I'm not sure how much benefit. But that's certainly something we can look at. See if there's any opportunity there.
I would like it. Unless it delays something astronomically, if you guys sit down and pencil it out tomorrow or whatever.
No,
I don't know if anyone else does. But.
Are you referring? Can I interrupt? Yeah. Are you referring mainly to Angus to Pine Street?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because from Pine to the dead end.
Right.
Oh yeah, but that first section, people go down Angus, they turn right on Pine, they go.
And that's the transition area too. That's where the right-of-way does change.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. So we can certainly look at it, and again, I'll speak for the contractor and say that this is not going to be driving the schedule for the whole project. But my concern again is, if we start down that road and it turns out that there's certain hard points that define that width, that might kind of paint us in a corner. That's my major concern.
Okay.
But we'll certainly look at that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good. Anything else? Rico?
And I appreciate the presentation. Some things that had come up from that September meeting, in addition, when I was out and about these last couple of months, is again the lighting. There was concern about the ramp and it being utilized as more of a, shall we say, a skateboard ramp.
Right.
I know we talked about that before, so I was just wondering if those couple items too. That's a couple questions I'd had last month.
Thanks for that. So on the ramp, I'm still working with my designers. They've come up with some conceptual ideas. What I basically asked them to do is what have other people done? What have other locations come up with? So they're looking at various types of essentially like sort of rumble strip type of thing, and then there's clips you can put on. We want to look at all those, but we also got to look at them against ADA compliance to make sure that the ramp still serves as a ramp. So that was an important comment that came out of the community meeting. We are looking at that. I don't have a final answer for you, but I will definitely keep pushing my designers to come up with something that suits that. As to the lighting, we did a sort of high-level, more theoretical type of study of the lighting in that area just to confirm that it meets acceptable standards. It does meet acceptable standards. That being said, we want to go out and do an actual field sample because doing a theoretical model will only judge whether a perfect light, given a perfect, maintenance record, shines correctly, right? I mean, the actuality of going out there with a light meter may yield separate results, so we're going to do that next. In general, I would say it appears that the lighting along First Avenue does meet standards. What I suspect that we're looking at is that for years, First Avenue was getting all kinds of free lighting from your neighbors at Artichoke Joe's, and now that it's been taken away by some guy building a grade set, I think there's a little bit of a, hey, you made it worse or you made it darker. So we want to take those concerns seriously because it's a safety thing. I mean, you can't have dark pockets, so it's not enough to just take an average over a whole street and say it meets requirements. We want to make sure there's no, dead areas there where we're, creating a safety hazard that didn't exist there before. So, short answer to the question, which I guess I could have started with, is we're still working on it, and we'll get back to you. We've got to finalize.
And so you'll keep us updated.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great. Item number 5, review of the agenda. I would like to move without objection, hopefully, item 11, which is the annual report from our Park and Rec Commission, to right after item number 8, public hearings. Anything else? Item 6, approval of the minutes of special city council meetings of October 9th, 12th, and 22nd, 2013, and the regular city council meeting of October 22nd, 2013, and the errors, corrections, omissions. Seeing none, they'll be approved as submitted. Item number 7, the consent calendar. All items are considered routine or implemented early or council action and may be enacted on by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless requested by a council member, citizen, or staff. Anything on consent calendar? Action?
Second.
Motion is second on the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 8, public hearings. There are none this evening. We'll move right to item number 11, which is receive annual report from the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Mike Palmer, and it's my pleasure to present our annual report. I am the chairperson this year. This is a photo of the commission as it existed in 2012, 2013. Normally, this is the point in the meeting when I would introduce my fellow commissioners. However, I think that they have complete confidence in my ability to deliver this report, or their schedules didn't allow them to attend. So Dave Nigel served as vice chair, Laura Davis, Commissioner Lori Greenberg, Commissioner Tom Laram, Commissioner Stephen Marshall, Commissioner Greg Pierce, Commissioner Lucy Zamatia, and Claudia Colonje served as our student rep. The purpose of the Parks and Rec Commission is to make recommendations to the City Council regarding recreation needs, use facilities, activities, classes and programs, and operations and maintenance of playgrounds and athletic fields, the swimming pool, and indoor facilities. All of that except for the senior center. Our 2012-2013 accomplishments included parks and recreation facility inspections, participation in the Beckner Shelter remodeling, continuing work on the memorial recognition and personal tribute program implementation, reconfiguration of the safety fencing around San Bruno Park Pool, and the annual Community Recognition Award. And I'll talk a little bit about those as we move through. Our facilities and inspections this year included Parkside Middle School fields, the athletic fields at Crestmore High School, the Herman Tot Lot, Lomita Park, and the Catalpa Tot Lot. While we were out at Parkside, we had a chance to meet with some of the girls softball coaches, listen to their needs. We're able to interact with them. Got to see all of the improvements that they have made, and they're quite considerable. Participating in the Beckner Shelter rehabilitation, I like to call it a remodel. The roof was replaced. There was some electrical work and replacement of the light fixtures. The facility was power washed. It was painted. And it was a community service project that was done by the Lions Club. I had an opportunity to be out there for, I really don't like saying this, my wife's 40-year class reunion. It just hurts, you know. and the facility is really nice. Yeah, I know. So the facility is really nice. It came out very well, we think. Yeah, and thanks to the San Bruno Lions Club for that community service project. The memorial recognition and personnel tribute programs provides a way for the community to celebrate contributions, especially individuals. A brochure was created and distributed to the community during the summer. We helped with the reconfiguring of the fencing around the San Bruno Park Pool. The county health inspector required slatting all the way around, and in working with the city staff, we developed a new fencing that allowed more use of the lawn. And from what we hear from the staff, they appreciate it, and I know that the constituents appreciate it because I've heard from them. So that worked out rather well. We had our annual Community Recognition Award. Nominations were accepted in February. 5 nominations were submitted, which is, by the way, which is a lot. It was good to see that. The commission recognized community member Lori Greenberg on April 17th for her service to the community, and especially for her work with the Junior Giants. And I know that several council members were here that night. It was nice to see that she got an award also from Jerry Hill's staff, and Lori is very deserving. Goals for 2013-2014, we're going to continue to work on the Adopt a Park program. This is something that was just being presented. We're going to review and advise the City Council on the newly implemented San Bruno Park School District user fees, evaluate and expand the aquatics program at the San Bruno Park swimming pool. And we'll continue with our park and facility inspections. This year on our schedule is Monte Verde, Buckeye, Pacific Heights Park, Fleetwood Park, Ponderosa Park Tot Lot, and Portola Center for the Performing Arts. That concludes my presentation for tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good. Any questions for Mike? Ken?
Good job, Mike. I know there was a lot of time spent, you had a subcommittee as far as more dog parks. Can you fill us in on what might have transpired with that over at Grundy? There were some discussions.
We actually discussed it only briefly, and we decided that one of the things that was coming out was they wanted it lit, not economically feasible right now, and the current park seems to fit most of the user needs.
Anything else? Irene?
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that you and I believe it was the Culture and Arts Commission did on the memorial recognition and personal tribute programs. I'm wondering if it's possible to put the application itself maybe in the middle of focus so that it gets a wider distribution. I know some people would like to do it. They just need a reminder that it needs to be, that they need to do that. So maybe that's something.
I don't think that would be a problem,
Okay.
but I need to check with staff.
Okay. I'm sure staff will find a way.
I'm sure they would too.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and
Okay.
a special thanks to your whole commission. The committees, boards, and commissions in the city really make this city what it is. And Parks and Rec is one that really deals with the public on a day-to-day basis. So we really appreciate your efforts. Thanks for a good job.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening.
All right, we're going to go to public comment on items not on the agenda. It is the council's policy to refer matters raised in this forum to staff for investigation and interaction where appropriate. The Brown Act prohibits the council from discussing or acting upon any matter not agendized pursuant to state law. Would anyone like to address the council? Okay. Please tell us your name and your street. Thank you.
Well, good evening. Good evening, Mayor Ruane, Vice Mayor O'Connell, Councilmember Salazar, Medina, and Ibarra. My name is Arlene Shields from the Office of San Mateo County Supervisor Adrian Tissier. And I'm here on her behalf to thank all of you council members, perhaps even community members, who were participating in the redistricting process. Quite exciting. The new district boundaries were approved on November 5th. They'll take effect in 30 days, so December 5th. And due to the changes in the district, Supervisor Tissier will be very honored to represent you. Supervisor invites you to learn more about the new boundaries and visit the county's website at smcdistrictcommittee.org. I can leave that for you as well. And I have also brought with me the supervisor's most recent newsletter, materials from their CalFresh program in the county. And I'm welcoming anyone to give us a call. And the supervisor has office hours, and we're more than happy to assist you with any questions.
Good.
Thank you.
Any questions for our representative? Thank you very much, and say hi to Adrian for us, please.
I will. Thank you.
City manager.
Mr. Mayor, either the representative or perhaps myself, if you're not prepared, it might be beneficial for the interest of the members of the public to identify specifically what that area of the city is now going to be represented in District 5 by Supervisor Tissier. It's a new experience for the city of San Bruno will be that we will be represented by two supervisors, one in District 1, as we have been historically, and now with the good representation of Supervisor Tissier for that section of the city, which is generally north of Sneath and west of Skyline.
I'm so sorry, I couldn't be specific. It was, and it has been, the official maps are being drawn, distributed. Again, December 5th is the official date. So I know that distribution will be more accessible at that time. It was quite an intricate process of dividing the lines, so I couldn't be specific at this moment.
So in very general terms, that is the area that will be newly represented in District 5. We would welcome and encourage anybody, particularly in those areas of the city, to take a look at the San Mateo County website and to become informed about how those district, the redrawing of the district lines may affect them in our community.
And if I could add to this, because I think the members of the public, especially in that area, are going to find out soon enough. We did make concerted effort. The city manager attended the hearing to try to keep the entire city of San Bruno in District 1. It was unfortunate, but we do have good representation. But our priority was to keep the entire city whole. the entire city in one district.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Item number 10, conduct of business. Item A, receive an oral report on the results of the November 5th, 2013 general municipal election and the schedule to fill city council vacancies.
Mayor Ruane and honorable council members. On November 5th, we had an election. Surprise, surprise. And I'm going to give you the unofficial results from the 23 precincts in San Bruno. We have approximately 19,891 voters. Out of those voters, Mayor Ruane, oh, what a difference. Okay, Mayor Ruane received 3,489 votes. Councilmember Rico Medina received 2,333 votes. Councilmember Ken Ibarra received 2,079 votes. Candidate Marty Medina received 1,617 votes. Candidate Andrew Mason received 1,135 votes. City Treasurer John Marty received 3,412 votes. And City Clerk Carol Bonner received 3,509. And I've gotten my figures from Shape the Future, which is actually the county site. There is another site called Smart Voter, which is the League of Women Voters, and those figures are slightly a little larger, but I didn't take those figures from there. I took them from the other. Now, the municipal returns, our muni code states the city council shall meet in the city hall chambers of the city hall at 7:30 p.m. on the Tuesday next succeeding the date of each general or special municipal election. And the county doesn't verify our numbers until 28 days after November 5th, which happens to be December 3rd. At this meeting, the City Council shall canvass the returns of the election, declare by resolution the results, and administer oaths of office and install newly elected officials. At this meeting also, the Vice Mayor shall be selected from among the members of the City Council who have not served as a mayor or a vice mayor. And all of you have served as vice mayor. So if all the members of the council have served as either mayor or vice mayor, the vice mayor shall be the person whose service as mayor or vice mayor was least recent, which means Rico Medina will be our next vice mayor. And I am glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Carol?
And congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations.
You also.
Congratulations to all elected. Regarding December 3rd, I was wondering if you, I did make a request and an inquiry, and I was wondering if you are prepared to answer that now for the date.
I think that you need to confer with your fellow council people and see what they feel.
Okay, anything else on elections? Yeah.
I made a request, the cat out of the bag. I made a request to the council, the city clerk, and copied the city manager if we could combine our installation of newly elected officers with San Bruno Park School District. That would be, I would assume that they're under the same guidelines, election guidelines, and that we could consolidate the community in having a ceremony there. Also, to extend an invitation to our newly elected trustees of the San Mateo County Community College District, Richard Holliber and Tom Moore, who also were elected, and also our representative from San Mateo Union High School District who ran unopposed, Linda Lees Dwyer. So I want to extend the invitation. I did mention it to a couple of the San Bruno Park School District newly elected members, and they were open to it, but I have not heard anything from the superintendent.
Speaking for myself, I would prefer that we get sworn in right here at our city council chambers, and they can do their own thing if they'd like. So that's my opinion. Rico, you get.
My opinion would be to invite them and extend that invitation, even if it's not the swearing-in ceremony specifically, because they may choose other their own forum or their own facility. I would love an extension to all those people that Ken had mentioned. I know I stopped by the school district the next morning, wanting to also just say that we are partners in this community. We serve the same constituents, so I think this is a way in which to continue that relationship. So I'm in favor.
Okay. Should we ask the city clerk and the city treasurer also? Absolutely. Carol?
What's that?
You have an opinion here.
You have
a voice.
I'm looking for your opinion.
Oh. I think that it would be nice to invite them to our function, but I think it should just stay within our group of people. I think they should have their own installation.
Okay.
Wait.
Are you referring to another venue or something? I mean, I'm not saying that
I'm sure they have their own venue when they're installed. I mean, I believe the school board has their own venue.
Let me just suggest that the city protocol is prescribed in the municipal code, the specific date, time, and specific date and time for the biannual reorganization of the city council and the confirmation of the election results. It may be the case, and we don't know at this time, it may be the case that the school district operates under a similar requirement, if you will. Hearing the, shall I say, the consensus, and let me restate what I think the consensus of those of you who are participated in the last election and were just recently elected, is that we would make an outreach to the school district and at least invite them to celebrate with us and to inquire, and then I can confirm back to you what their protocol is and whether there is even an opportunity for consideration of a joint ceremony. I'm not sure whether there's consensus about that, but we can certainly provide that information back to you.
Okay. And just to clarify, I have no objection to them attending or even asking anyone else to attend, but I just think that as far as the swearing in, we should limit it to our own council people.
Yeah,
and,
my guess is that
treasurer
they either historically or by regulation have their own protocol for that. That's just my guess, but we'll find out.
And John Marty, do you have any comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize John was here.
He's just behind you.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. I am of the opinion. Like the mayor, keep it within just the city elected officials. Probably, I would imagine they've had their own protocol for who knows how long, and maybe we'll find out that they may prefer that as well. But I'm of the opinion that we should keep it within the city.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
We heard we said we're supposed to meet at City Hall.
Following the code.
Through the chair, you read the ordinance, or you read the code that stated that we are supposed to meet at City Hall, City Chambers, 28 days after the election. Well,
The Tuesday.
Right. Well, this is not City Hall.
This is considered our city hall, though.
The chambers.
This is considered our chamber.
Okay.
We could meet in the kitchen if you wanted at City Hall.
Okay, let's don't get too far out on this thing.
I appreciate just extending the invitation, and if they attend, and we'll acknowledge them, and if they wish to keep a separate ceremony, that's okay too. But, I mean, we're calling a special meeting to do this. It's not part of our regular meeting, so let's invite the community.
All right, thank you. Item 10B, adopt a resolution approving the 2013-18 five-year capital improvement program and appropriating funding for the 2013-14 capital improvement project budget.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we're presenting to you tonight the five-year capital improvement program and the one-year budget for the completion of approximately 51 projects that were presented to you in workshops on October 8th and October 22nd. Before I turn over the presentation in a little more detail to the Finance Director for first of her last two presentations to the City Council, I would just note that the capital budget includes a wide variety of important projects for our community's future. And as such, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to cover the broad range of issues and topics that might be of interest to the City Council, and to provide an adequate opportunity for the City Council to provide the type of direction that might be valuable to staff as well as to your interest in guiding the completion of those projects. I have received a couple, not a lot, but a couple of City Council member comments on individual projects since our study session, and I'd like to propose that it would be useful, I think, from staff's perspective and potentially also from the City Council's perspective, if as part of your action tonight you consider the following suggestion, and that is that we return to you at the beginning of calendar year 2014 after the holidays with a short update presentation that would cover in a little bit of an opportunity for a little bit of additional consideration of details of some of the projects that we are embarking on in the near term. So where projects are going to receive work and there is some opportunity for you to guide that work before we get started, we would appreciate that guidance. And I'm thinking a short update on the work program over the next 6 months would be of benefit and value to the city's work program. So I would suggest that as part of your action. You don't need to add that, but simply if that's of interest to you, we will produce that. If it's not of interest, you can tell us. So with that, I would turn over to the Finance Director to walk through the details of the budget that you are being asked to approve tonight.
Thank you, and good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. These first few slides are just a recap of the information that was previously presented during the two City Council study sessions on the CIP budget. We just completed projects in the 2012 to 17 five-year work program. A total of 12 projects were completed during the 2012-13 fiscal year. We have many CIP projects that continue that are in progress. The 6 that are on the slide behind me are just a handful of those that have recently come to the City Council and requested council action, either in the award of a design contract or construction contract. So those projects are continuing into the 13-14 fiscal year. And finally, moving forward to the 2013 to 18 five-year CIP program, many of the projects that previously appeared will continue and do continue into the proposed budget, but there are also 16 new projects that appear in the five-year work program. Not all these projects are anticipated to begin during the current fiscal year, but are anticipated at some point during the five-year program. And many of these projects propose necessary improvements and repairs to city facilities, as well as technology enhancements to keep pace with the technology-driven society that we're living in and trying to operate and do business in. So moving into the overview of the budget, the 5-year work program identifies 61 total projects for a total of $135 million in necessary capital improvements to city facilities and infrastructure. Of that amount, $97 million is to fund critical system improvements to the city's water and wastewater systems, and an additional $12 million is dedicated to the Crestmore Neighborhood Reconstruction Project. The 2013-14 Capital Improvement Program budget totals $50 million, with $24 million in carryover appropriations and $26 million in new funding requests. That's a significant dollar amount. However, keep in mind that there are several significant high dollar projects that are included in this amount, which include the Advanced Water Meter Infrastructure Project at a total cost of $5.1 million, the Crestmore Neighborhood Reconstruction Project at $12 million, construction of the College Water Pump Station at $3.4 million, and construction of the Olympic Sewer Pump Station at $3 million, and the replacement of Well 15 at a cost of $3 million. Those 5 projects alone account for more than half of that total amount that is proposed for the current year program. I want to just touch on one topic area that we did discuss during the study session. I just want to revisit that, and that is the proposal for the replacement of vehicles and equipment. The proposed CIP budget has a total of 17 vehicles or pieces of equipment that are recommended for replacement. Page 134 of the CIP budget provides a listing of these vehicles in priority replacement order, which provides the City Council with the opportunity to draw the line at some point if fewer vehicle replacements are desired in the current year. The number of vehicles in need of replacement comes as a result of an extended period of time in which the city has delayed replacement of vehicles in order to conserve limited financial resources during the economic downturn. Oops. Over the past 6 years, the city has spent an average of $160,000 annually on vehicle replacement, which excludes major new acquisitions such as fire apparatus or Vectors. All the vehicles included on the replacement list have exceeded their useful life and are now becoming increasingly costly to maintain and repair. In many cases, parts of these vehicles are no longer available. In total, the 17 vehicles, which includes the replacement of the existing street sweeper, that total amount is $675,500. Just touching again upon the dollars for the 5-year 2013-18 CIP program. Page 14 of the budget, the proposed budget provides a summary of the various funding sources for the CIP program. And if you look at that page, you'll see a total of 36 different funding sources that are incorporated into the work program, which include restricted funds like enterprise revenues, grants, and transportation funding. And I would just like to make a point of noting that city staff make an effort to look for grant opportunities and other sources of funding when capital projects are envisioned and brought forward for consideration, and look to unrestricted funding sources when all other alternatives have been exhausted. That said, a significant part of the 2013-14 work program still has no dedicated funding source and instead requires the use of some of the city's undesignated funding sources. This includes the use of the General Fund Equipment Reserve at a total of $470,600, the Building and Facilities Internal Service Fund at an amount of $136,000, the One-Time Revenue Fund at a total amount of $859,975, and the Technology Fund at $40,000. So that concludes my overview of the CIP budget. I'm happy to answer any questions at this point in time.
Any questions for Kim? Rico?
Yes. As the CIP as a whole, if we're voting on the whole thing, that I would not be able to vote in the affirmative this evening. The city manager's idea that I heard, I think, is a great one. I think she articulated it to me as she did this evening, is it enables us, as we have the elephant in the room, you take a bite out of it, and it's more manageable. It's a coordination of staff resources and time on, as the city manager suggested, like 10 items that are the most pressing and the most important to us, and have those come back in 214 and addressed that way. I appreciated that concept and like that idea.
Any other questions or comments? Action by the council?
Introduce the
Well,
oops.
can I, through the chair?
Yes.
So the motion is then, or I'm sorry, for the resolution would be to approve the CIP as its entirety and not the city manager recommendation, correct?
Before,
Connie, can you restate your recommendation?
My recommendation is that you approve the budget, that you do so with the understanding that you will receive a presentation about the upcoming, let's say, 6 months work program at the beginning of the year that would give you an opportunity to understand in a little bit more detail at your interest those projects that will be specifically receiving near-term attention. Now, there are a number of projects that are in progress, that you've already awarded contracts or have received the opportunity of a little bit more detail. There are a couple of projects that I think staff is anxious to move forward on, and I'll suggest a couple of them that were the subject of comments that I received or questions that I received from council members. One, for example, was the advanced meter reading project. I think there's, honestly, I don't know if staff intends to move forward in the next 6 months, but I certainly think before we do a great deal more work on that it would be very useful to staff, as well as potentially yourselves, given the high dollar value of that project and the need for some really detailed analysis about the cost recovery period, that we spend a little bit of time and thought and discussion with you about that. Another project that I spent some time on today working with staff has to do with the improvements to Station 51. There are a number of component pieces to that project that make up the total $85,000 request, but our presentation to you did not precise that, how much are we proposing to spend for each component part. And I think it might be of utility and interest to you to better understand what the needs at Station 51 are, and that you ask us to present a little bit more information to you. So again, the work program items, those items that are going to be moving forward that you haven't already heard about in any extended detail, would be the subject of a regular city council meeting briefing and an opportunity for you to give us any additional guidance that you might desire. That's, in a long-winded way, is my recommendation.
Okay.
I think you did pretty good. With that, I mean, there are some items in here that we've talked about, but those aren't on the 2004 review, I'll call it, or the bringing back up some of those topics that we talked about on the CIP. Some vehicles, but they're not for the 14 that are being referenced here, or a system. And I appreciate your time this evening going to Station 51 with me. I think that is something you talked about, the safety over at the City Hall. I think that's something that you talked maybe needs to be a little refined. So those are things that why I want to have the opportunity. So what we're going to do it right, because we have the focus and we have the ability. So I'm not against a lot of the items in here with how the city manager outlined it and described it, that I can come to a consensus and go with that.
Ken?
And just to reiterate, I can appreciate my colleagues' concern with this. This is a good program. This is a work program. Every single project will come to us in detail, of which we can, approve or disapprove or make changes to.
Yeah, and basically my recommendation is based on the fact that sometimes for some of these projects there's a significant amount of staff work effort that goes into developing the project. In some cases there is even a design contract that is under the city manager's expenditure authority that might get done before the project comes back to you for construction award. So there is a significant amount of thought process and decision making, and my recommendation would include taking the opportunity to go back, give a little thought to the work program. What might the city council be interested in having a little bit more information about before we march off, and do additional work on those projects that are not necessarily going to come back to you for contract awards. Those would be among those that I would say might be useful for that recommendation. In addition, if there are any projects that individual council members have on their minds, and if you want to let me know, we would include those, assuming that they are coming back, that they're in the near-term work program.
Okay.
Plus,
Understood.
I want the last vote with our finance director, obviously all be in the affirmative. So.
Irene, your resolution introduction
I
still stands?
Yes, I'll introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Great. Item 10C, received first quarter financial update report as of September 30th, 2013, and adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 13-14 operating budget to reappropriate fiscal year 12-13 carryover encumbrances.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. The purpose of my presentation this evening is twofold. The first is to provide you with the first quarter financial update, and then secondly is to describe the action being requested through the resolution before you this evening. The first quarter financial update is typically, we don't typically see a lot of indicators at the first quarter, primarily as a result of the timing of the receipt of many of the city's major revenue sources. The most notable one being property tax and vehicle license fees. Both of those are received in primarily two annual installments, the first in December, the second in April. So at this point in time, we have nothing to note and no money is received yet in property tax. However, the total general fund revenues are at 17% of budget, which is really, they tend to hover between the 15 to 18% mark at the first quarter. So the 17% of budget is where we anticipate to be at this point in time of the year. There's a few highlights I would like to point out. The first being the hotel motel occupancy tax, or TOT. The amount of $529,000 reflects the receipt of only 2 months of TOT revenues because of the delay in billing and receiving those. So we're always a month behind. So that $529 puts us at 23% of budget for the current fiscal year, which is a good amount. Keep in mind, while that looks good right now, do keep in mind that the winter months we do tend to see TOT sort of drop off, and the revenues tend to slow down a little bit. So while it is an aggressive start, we will see, and I do anticipate some movement downward in the next few months. Business taxes are another category in which I would like to bring your attention to. At 81% of budget at $1.895 million. This number is primarily a result of an increase in the number of sizable businesses that have located over at the Bay Hill Office Park. And also, business tax is collected at the beginning of the fiscal year, so we tend to receive all those monies in July and August, and we receive very small amounts throughout the remainder of the year. So the vast majority of business tax revenues have been received to date. The remaining amount, the difference between the budget and what you're seeing there, is the airport parking tax, which is also included in this category. And that's billed and received quarterly. So that amount will continue to receive throughout the year and put us at budget by year end, I would anticipate. Moving on to the expenditures, all of the departments are really operating, and their expenditures are where I would anticipate them to be at this point in time during the fiscal year. Total general fund expenditures are at 23% of budget. A couple departments are trending slightly above, and those are for explainable reasons. The first, in engineering and streets, we do pay an annual assessment to CCAG. That is paid during the first quarter, so that money is spent up front. So that trend above budget is as a result of that expenditure. As well as in recreation, that slightly above budget is where we tend to see recreation at this time of year, because their budgeted part-time salaries are primarily during the summer months and are expended at the beginning of the fiscal year. So that kind of explains those discrepancies, but otherwise we're seeing expenditures track within budget. On the enterprise funds, just very quickly walking through, the water revenues are at 31% of budget, so slightly above the 25% marker that we would anticipate at this point in time of the year. And that 31% is anticipated because, again, similar to what I just said with recreation, we do tend to see higher water usage during the summer months as people are irrigating their yards. So while we are trending slightly above budget, we would anticipate a drop off during the winter months. Wastewater revenues at 27%, just slightly above the budget in that category. And cable television revenues are trending at 22% of budget, so they are slightly below where they were at this point last year. However, on the same token, the expenditures in the department are also trending below budget at 22%. So revenues over expenditures, our revenues are still outpacing expenditures in the cable department as of the end of the first quarter. And finally, stormwater is collected on the property tax roll, so we don't see the first installment until December, so there's nothing to note there. Otherwise, all the expenditures within the enterprises are within the expected threshold for the first quarter. A similar story with internal service funds. The internal service funds are funded just through interdepartmental transfers, so the 25% is just the result of standard transfers every month that put those at 25%. And on the expenditure side, all are tracking as anticipated. You will see that the self-insurance fund expenditures at 60% of budget puts them well above that 25% marker, and that's really the result of the city paying premiums for the liability and workers' compensation programs at the beginning of the fiscal year. So those are costs that have been expended already, but we will not see those again this fiscal year. So that budget will remain as it should. So moving on to the council action that's before you this evening. The city uses purchase orders to earmark and encumber budgeted funds for the purchase of equipment and contractual agreements of significant dollar amounts. So essentially anything over $5,000, we use a purchase order to encumber the funds. Oftentimes, these major purchases and contracts will span more than one fiscal year. Since operating budgets do not carry forward from one fiscal year to the next, it is necessary to amend the current fiscal year budget to ensure that the previously authorized funds are available in the current year to cover the cost of uncompleted projects and continuing obligations. At the end of the 2012-13 fiscal year, a total of $9.6 million of outstanding purchase orders remained. And the large dollar amount of that is really with the Emergency Disaster Fund, which is the Crestmore Reconstruction Project. So that is the primary driver of that $9 million number. But otherwise, the purchase orders that are proposed for carryover were attached to the staff report for your information. And that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Good. Any questions for our finance director? Action by the council.
I'll introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Aguirre.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10D, adopt an amendment number 7 to the franchise agreement for integrated waste management services with Recology San Bruno, implementing an organics food waste collection program and amending the rate adjustment application date.
All right, switching gears again. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, the current franchise agreement with Recology San Bruno went into effect on July 1st, 1998, and has been amended 6 times for such items as the collection of AB 939 fees, allocation of costs related to debris box services, and to extend the term of the contract or of the agreement. Amendment number 7, which is before you this evening, incorporates the recently approved Organics Food Waste Program scheduled to go into effect on January 1st, 2014 into the existing franchise agreement. The city worked with an outside consultant, HF&H, who has considerable expertise in this area of work, along with Recology San Bruno, to develop the proposed franchise amendment. The proposed amendment adds a service expectation for all types of customers in San Bruno and includes education and outreach requirements leading up to the program rollout and continuing thereafter. In addition to the Organics Food Waste Program, the proposed amendment also moves the annual due date for Recology's rate application up from the current March 1st date to January 30th, which will allow sufficient time for the city to thoroughly review the rate application and still meet the noticing requirements of Proposition 218. At this point, we thought it would be a good idea to have Kirsten Pinocchi, General Manager of Recology San Bruno, come in and provide you with an update of the commercial and residential organics pilot program.
So good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. I want to give you an... I wanted to give you an update on the pilot programs that are going on in San Bruno. The commercial organics pilot essentially began back in 2011 when we were approached by Walmart and YouTube to implement an organics collection program at their sites. From that, we've grown to over 10 commercial businesses participating in the organics collection program, and even the city facilities are also in the process of participating in the program. So, before the pilot began, the commercial customers that we just referenced were diverting about 31% of their materials. During this pilot program for the commercial customers, they are now at a 50% diversion program. 50% diversion. You might not, that's a 19% improvement, but just as a reminder, the majority of those customers have only been doing this program for 6 months. So as we know and as we've seen, it takes a while for these programs to mature, so we expect to see that number grow. But in just the short period of time, I think 19% was very effective for those customers. So then we wanted to roll out a residential pilot program, and with the approval of the council, we rolled out this program in June, and 315 homes were selected, and with 8 streets. And these 8 streets, the factors for selecting those streets included a variety of demographics, including people with yards and people without yards, and streets that weren't really participating in yard waste and streets that were participating in yard waste. We wanted a really good dynamic makeup for that residential program. Each of the residents were mailed a letter welcoming them to the program. They were each delivered a kitchen pail, and we were also provided a specific link on our website with frequently asked questions and a list of what was appropriate in the pail. I am happy to say that the overall participation in these areas increased from 37% to 72%. So overall participation means just this. Before the pilot, 37% of the 315 homes actually put their green waste cart out for service. And they were serviced every other week at that time. During the pilot, 72% of the customers put their cart out for service on 1 week or both weeks, because we're serviced weekly. So if somebody may not have been wasn't putting it out at all before the pilot, they at least put it out 1 of the 2 weeks. So we saw an increase in participation. Unfortunately, some of the areas that had low participation before the pilot continued to have low participation during the pilot. What can we do about that? Well, we know that recycling begins with children, so we will be focusing our outreach to the schools in San Bruno to ensure children bring the composting message home and encourage their families to participate. What kind of things did we learn from doing this pilot? Why did we do it? We found customers using plastic bags, so we've made that a focus in our outreach materials. We also found that customers were putting their kitchen pail curbside for service. So we've made sure to include that information in our material as well. And we've also asked the delivery of the kitchen pail to be delivered on the curb so that there was no confusion. I just said it. To have the kitchen pail delivered to the porch so there's no confusion as to not being putting it on the curb. We will also ensure the information delivered with the kitchen pail and the information on our website is bilingual. So I just wanted to share a couple of photos to see the different ways that our residents in the pilot are using the program. Some of them are actually mixing their food with their current yard waste material, and some are using it just for the food waste. So you can see the bottom one has probably a contaminated food service bag, and because the paper bag was contaminated probably with some juice from the food, it went into the green. So they were doing it correctly. Some of the marketing materials that are going to be delivered to the homes, and the one on the right is a sticker that's actually going to go right on the outside of the kitchen pail gives a really good visual of what's going to be allowed in the program. And the one on the left is a 4-part brochure that fits perfectly inside the kitchen pail. And that has another visual of what's allowed in the pail, and it also has a list of frequently asked questions in both English and Spanish. And then the back of the program has some additional information and tips on how to compost easily in your home. And the last piece of marketing material is a trifold flyer. This will go out to residents around the week of Thanksgiving, and it announces that we will be delivering the kitchen pail the week of December 9th through the 16th. And again, we push the visuals to the customer, showing them what's going to be allowed in their green cart along with all their grass, and some tips on different ways. If you choose not to use the pail, you can use a milk carton, you can wrap your things in newspaper, some of the things that we've been encouraging customers to do throughout this pilot. So with that, I wanted to just give you an update on how the pilots were going, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Kirsten? Ken?
You threw a lot of numbers and percentages out. What about comments? What sort of outreach to the customers? What have they been saying? And please be honest.
I will. We've taken, my supervisor's gone out and kind of ridden the route several times to kind of catch people coming out to the curb, bringing their carts to the curb. If he notices they're not participating, he's asking why. And some people just said, I don't really make enough food waste to really participate in the program. That's an honest answer. A few people just said they're just plainly not interested. He's had quite a few say, I'm excited about this. I've told all my friends how easy it is. So we're getting a good mixture of comments from the residents on the pilot.
I'm interested in knowing how they're reacting to having food waste mixed in and it's sitting there for the better part of a week. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and how does that, if there's any comments about that as far as when it does get cleared out, the residue of, in that toter.
I can honestly say, and I checked all the records from the phone records from the customer service representatives. Not one person on the pilot has called to say, it's gross, I can't stand the flies, I'm not doing it. We have had nobody turn in their pail after the pilot has began. We only had one issue at one of the schools, and it was during a really hot season. They hadn't done it, and it was really, really warm, and they had a few issues. We immediately rinsed out and power washed their containers and brought them back, and we haven't seen a problem since.
Any other questions?
Through the chair.
Michael?
You mentioned that the participation, you had some numbers, and you said that those numbers were for people that were participating. Their participation increased, but there were people that didn't participate before and continued not to participate. And I'm wondering how this sample group matches the rest of the city, and as a whole, does the city participate or not participate?
We tried, when we selected the streets, we tried to select different demographics within the city, so that we had a little bit of here, a little bit over there, trying to make a nice conceptual overview of what our city is made up of. As a whole, the customers that don't participate, it's because they don't have a yard or they have a gardener that takes their grass away. The increase in participation during this pilot were from customers that have a gardener but are actually not participating. Like the customer that you saw had the food and the bags and the pumpkin in there, they more likely didn't participate prior because there was no grass in their container. I do believe that the streets that we selected do dynamically make up what our city's made up of. Participation in yard waste right now, I don't have an overall, we haven't taken a number like that. We service the carts, and we'll get a true picture when we look at tonnage, when we look at the actual tonnage and watch it move from the garbage to the organics.
Right, and that's what I was kind of hoping we'd see at this point, because I know it's interesting to say, okay, we went from 37 to 72, but I really want to know how dedicated people are going to be to doing this, and I know we've gone down the path and we're not going to turn back at this point, but
you know, I'd really like to see those real numbers that show us that we are really diverting garbage and that we can do it successfully as a city, that everyone is going to be, at least the majority of us are going to be participating.
I can't wait to bring those numbers back to show the shift. And I will say that I did reach out to the Ecology San Mateo County, who obviously has this program and has had it in force for 3 years now. Their participation is on average about 65%. And that's participation. That's just putting it out to the curb, not knowing really what's in there, if it's grass or food. So the true diversion will come when I can come back and say we shifted as we anticipated from garbage to.
And when can we expect to see some preliminary numbers?
Whenever you as a council would like me to come back and give you numbers, I can do that.
What would be reasonable? How many months do we want to see the program in production?
I would at least 6 months. Give the program at least 6 months to get underway. So around summer, I think we'll have some numbers to provide and hopefully see a trend. Hopefully we can show a trend from January to June and see how the numbers escalate in the organics portion.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Anything else? Did a member of the public want to speak on this issue? No, I guess not. Okay. Action by the council? Yeah, introduce the amendment.
I'll introduce the amendment for adoption.
Where's that motion?
Vice
Is
Mayor
there a motion?
O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Rivera.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Hi. Item 10E, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a multi-year contract with Proven Management, Inc. For as-needed sewer system cleaning and video inspection services in an amount not to exceed $70,000 for fiscal year 2013-14.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Is this working? Okay, sorry. As a way of introduction, my name is Robert Wood, and I'm a management analyst for the Public Services Department. As you may be aware, under the city's legal agreement with Baykeeper and the Regional Board, the city is obligated to video inspect the entire sewer system. The city completed this requirement during the summer of 2012. Going forward, however, the city must continue to video a sewer line within 90 days after a sanitary sewer overflow, or SSO. For explanation, an SSO is when a sewer pipe fails and raw sewage overflows onto the street or nearby property. There is no legal requirement for the city to video the entire system again. However, best practices recommends agencies have a continual system-wide video inspection program. Some cities perform the service in-house, and others use private contractors. The city is currently developing a long-term, efficient, and cost-effective video inspection program, and staff will present the program to council before next year's CIP. In the meantime, the city needs to have a contractor in place in case there's an SSO. This limited contract presented to you tonight is not the most cost-effective or efficient solution, but is the cheapest option in the short term until a long-term program is finalized and presented to you next year. This is a multi-year on-call contract that ends June 30th, 2015, and the city has the option to cancel the contract at any time. The city used this contractor for the last 4 months of 2012-13, and they completed all work as assigned. The contractor charges a flat 4-hour rate per visit, so to maximize the contract, whenever the contractor comes out, staff will schedule all the locations for them to video in one time. The city does have 90 days to respond to an SSO, so we do have some flexibility when scheduling work, so we don't have to do it the same day. Also, the work is scheduled on an as-needed basis and depends on how many SSOs we have. If we aren't any SSOs, the contractor isn't called out, and any unused money returns back to the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. With that, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of staff at this time? Rico?
To the Chair, you indicated that we have, and to the Director, that you had 90 days in which to video this, do we have any of our neighbors, Millbrae, South City, that have a system, a video type thing that they have, that they use, that we could partner with or ask for that to be shared in some ways?
Well, South City does have video inspection equipment. That is one option we could explore. That will be part of our long-term plan when we come to you next year.
Okay, so did we explore that thus far, or have we even reached out, or is that just something we'll explore when the next year at some point when a permanent plan comes forward?
Yes, the city already entered in discussion with South City, and is a draft agreement available for us to enter with South City. The cost is very close to the cost what this private contractor would provide us with. The only challenge with any agreement with other city, like how, including with South City, that their equipment, they purchased their video equipment 2 years ago, and they are developing their own skill set in the agencies, and they would provide that service to us when that additional resource is available, that the city would be, they would provide that service when their additional resources would be available. That's why our recommendation to have a private contractor on board at this time, to make sure that when the city needs, that service will be available to us.
Okay, so yes, we have, because if we have within 90 days and the resources there, I think that's something we should explore as a long-term solution. Obviously, this is something that is important, needed. We've already gone ahead and videoed all the system, but my understanding is then staff will tell the contract. We have 3, because if my memory is correct, our SSOs have gone down to this year.
We
dozen
had
less.
Well, in fiscal year 2012-13, we had 11 SSOs. The requirement was to have 24, so we're quite under. By 2019, we can't have more than 3.
Okay, and when we schedule this service out, it's a 4-hour block of time that they charge each time.
Yes, so it takes a while to set up, take down.
Sure.
So we plan as many areas as we can to maximize that full 4-hour period. It's just not, we don't call them just for one response.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Through the chair.
Michael?
Thank you. Can we also get confirmation on the services that are being provided are not just the video or the filming of the video, but also the analysis and interpretation that goes along with whatever is...
Yes, part of it, when they video it, they code the condition of the pipe, whether there's roots or it's collapsed, and they give a national standard rating. So we receive the video from that and their rating, and we add that into our system.
Okay. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. We had 11 SSLs in the prior year. So worst case scenario, we're planning for another 11 this year. Realistically, based on everything that we know about the system, what can we really expect this year? Or ideally, what would we expect this year?
No more SSOs.
No.
As of from July to now, we've had 2 SSOs. They were all in September. We do have a small lateral camera, and we were able to camera one. The other was a larger SSO, a larger main, and we don't have the equipment to do that. So we're still within our 90-day window, but we will need to, because the camera's so small, it gets often surrounded by water, and you don't get a good picture.
And if we do expect to see any SSLs in the coming year, would we expect those to be in the mains, which I think we have a little bit more control over, or would they be laterals where we have less control?
Well, both. That 11 number only accounts for what's in city right away. We don't need to report the other. There are private laterals all the time, but
So if they are lower laterals, they are included in this. If they were upper laterals, then they're really not counted in what we're talking about here.
No.
Even if sewage were to get into the storm drains,
When it's a private resident responsibility, that lateral is not counted against the number of SSO. But if is a lateral SSO, which will happen, then if is the city is responsible for that lower lateral, and the city is responsible for about 25% of lower laterals in the system, then that is counted against the number of SSOs.
okay. And so within that constraint, whether it's a main or a lateral, we expect to be well below the 11.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else or action by the council?
I'll introduce the resolution.
Vice Mayor O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Aguirre.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. Item 10F, adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with West Yost for the development of a coordinated infrastructure replacement work plan in an amount not to exceed $77,700.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. My name is Yoon Joon Kim. I work as a city engineer for the Public Services Division. The city adopted the latest update of the water system master plan in February and is in the final stages of completing the storm drain and the sanitary sewer master plans. It is anticipated that these master plans will be substantially complete by the end of this year. These master plans identify over $150 million in improvement projects over the next 10 years. These improvement projects ensure the adequate capacity and reliability within each infrastructure system. The projects are prioritized independently for each infrastructure system. Replacement of the infrastructure will require extensive trenching within city streets. Construction impacts will include utility service disruptions, noise, and disruptions to pedestrian and vehicular traffic flow. Careful planning and coordination to minimize construction-related impacts and maximize efficiencies in construction will be extremely important. Since the streets will be torn up and reconstructed, coordination with the city's pavement management system is also required. The most efficient approach to implementing improvement projects is to coordinate and combine them into larger bundled projects, which would maximize the efficiency and minimize the disruption to the public. The utility infrastructure systems are complex, and a complicated analysis would need to be performed. Coordination of the different utility priorities will require minor alterations to the timing of the projects that are recommended in the individual master plans. The development of the coordinated work plan requires a detailed understanding of the systems and the computer modeling used to prepare the master plans. City staff does not have the specialized expertise nor workload capacity to perform this analysis. West Yost prepared the city's water system master plan and has performed a peer review of city's storm drain master plan. West Yost has the required expertise and knowledge of city's infrastructure systems to develop a coordinated work plan that integrates the various projects of these separate master plans into a coordinated implementation schedule. The proposal from West Yost provides for development of a work plan for each year of a 10-year period. Schedules and maps will be developed that illustrate the bundled, prioritized projects with project sequencing. The 2013-14 Capital Improvement Program budget includes sufficient funds for these engineering services within the water capital and wastewater capital funds. Staff recommends adopting a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with West Yost for the development of a coordinated infrastructure work plan in an amount not to exceed $77,700. That concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer questions.
And questions, Ken?
Would you be able to give an example of a coordinated project, which would include water and wastewater?
An example would be on a particular street, if there is a high priority water main to be replaced and also a low priority sewer main to be replaced, we'd have to make sure that that combined priority is considered so that the sewer is replaced at the same time the water is, rather than coming back 4 years later to tear up the street once again to replace the sewer main, because the priorities for each individual master plan were separate. It's basically considering the total prioritization of the separate master plans together.
Have we done that before, where we've had a contractor do a combined project as far as water, mixing water and, I don't want to say mixing water and the wastewater, but mixing the projects?
We have on Mastic Avenue. I was not around at that time, but
On Mastic
I'm not saying that
Avenue-
there's contractors that don't lay sanitary pipe and there's contractors that don't lay
On
water
Mastic
pipe.
Avenue, water and sewer were replaced in the same time, and also then after the replacement of the utilities, the was resurfaced and repaved the street.
Sounds good.
Okay, any other questions?
I just have a quick
Maureen?
question. Thank you. And maybe I missed it. Is there a timeline that we'll be able to learn what the results are going to be?
after execution of a contract, we should have the initial schedule and prioritized bundle packages, first draft ready within a couple of months.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So with that, we won't be undertaking any major project until we actually see that there's possibly a coordinated project.
Correct, and the implementation of the work plan will also come through the next year's CIP as well as contract approvals.
That's what I'm getting at. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Action by the council?
I'll introduce resolution for adoption.
You're scoring 100%. Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Salazar.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Mayor Ruane.
Aye. And 10G, receive a report and provide direction to staff regarding acquisition of the Bay Shore Circle median and alternatives for use of the property.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this report comes to you after a very long time of interest and concern on the part of the City Council and the residents of the Bay Shore Circle area. Staff acknowledges that this is a longstanding interest of the City Council, and we're hopeful that the report tonight gives you an opportunity to move forward in whatever direction you may desire, hopefully with the opportunity to produce a better appearance and hopefully some utility of this property in our community. Bay Shore Circle is located in the 5th Edition neighborhood. The map that you have, the overhead visual that you have in front of you, gives a good perspective of the proximity of this open piece of land to within the neighborhood, extending north-south in the it extends east-west in the eastern portion of the town, roughly running eastward from the front of the BART station. In total, the property comprises about 1.2 acres. It is situated between two residential streets that are both fairly narrow. One of them is a two-way street, one of them is a one-way street. Parking is restricted because of the width of the streets to one side. And as you know, this is a fairly densely populated neighborhood in our city, and one which is impacted, of course, by the narrowness of the street, and, as I indicated earlier, has been impacted for a long period of time by the visual character of this kind of massive open space. It's hard to even really call it a median. It's because it's so wide and so long. It is essentially where it has its historic base as a railroad spur line that was operated historically in our city by Union Pacific Railroad. The property was acquired by SamTrans, the San Mateo County Transportation District, during the early stages of planning for the BART line extension in the late 1990s, early 2000s, the BART line extension into San Bruno and beyond. Via agreement between BART and SamTrans, BART has been responsible since that acquisition for the maintenance of the property, and they do, I think, what could best be described as a limited job of maintaining the growth of weeds and the, again, a very minimal pruning of the trees. The city has coordinated with BART over the last several years in two manners. One is to require the annual cleanup of the property to meet a reasonable standard of fire hazard mitigation, as we do throughout the rest of the city. And city staff has provided some additional maintenance services to the area in order simply to provide a level of hazard mitigation, but in particular visual blight mitigation to the neighborhood. The City Council has previously directed a number of years ago, I believe it was in 2008, that staff review and report back to the City Council what might be done with this property should it, what was the broad range of options for utilization of the property should the city have an interest to potentially seek its development or its improvement for public use. At that time, staff presented a number of options, including consideration of actual building development, residential development on the property, given that it's actually big enough. But that alternative proved to be infeasible because of the location of utility lines and the dense population of the neighborhood as it exists in its current configuration. However, a variety of alternatives might be considered by the City Council for improvement of the property to a standard where it could be utilized either for a linear or bike path, some sort of a community garden, or some sort of active or passive recreational park use. The investigation or analysis of opportunities for utilization of this property have extended to conversations with BART. It has been somewhat difficult to catch their attention on this, but recently our conversations have proved worthwhile in that BART has identified that it would be potentially in its interest to transfer the property at a nominal price, and we have not engaged in any negotiations with the right people at BART, but are pleased to report to you that we do have their attention, and that attention is positive, I guess, in terms of their willingness to consider transferring the property. Now, again, that would be potentially complex because they don't actually own the property. The property is owned and entitled by SamTrans, but I think it's a very good start. And with the City Council's direction, we would undertake what could be a potentially extensive work effort to negotiate, to unravel the property ownership issues and to negotiate both with BART and with SamTrans towards eventual transfer of the title, property title and fee ownership to the city. Staff would recommend, if that is the interest of the City Council, and then you wish to consider subsequently productive use of the property in a different manner other than just simply maintaining it, that staff would also strongly recommend that any consideration to acquire the property would include our analysis of any contamination issues that might exist on the property and might eventually impact the city's ability to utilize it in a different manner, and potentially the ownership liability issues that would accompany ownership of a property that might be impacted in that manner. Given its historic use for active railroad purposes, we can't predict, but would strongly recommend that we can't predict what types of impacts might be experienced by the property from an environmental perspective, but we would strongly recommend that any consideration to acquire the property include our initial effort to complete a Phase 1 environmental review. That is essentially a document screen to determine what potential issues might exist, and that review could, and I would guess would likely, indicate the need for a Phase 2 environmental review, which would include the sampling of soil materials and analytical review to determine what and whether there are environmental hazards present on the property. And a Phase 2 environmental review could cost in the $15,000 to $20,000 range, whereas the Phase 1 is relatively simple. As I indicated, paper screening that would cost, based on our experience with other similar projects, approximately $5,000, and could be done relatively expediently. So with that, staff would be pleased to hear your direction as to the next steps that you would like us to undertake in order to either continue status quo or move this property at long last to some other type of ownership and use.
Okay. Any questions of staff comments? Irene?
One question, would we do the environmental review before we acquire the property, so that if something is not quite right about it, it would be a factor in how we would acquire the property, or if we did?
I would strongly recommend the answer to be yes, that you would do that sooner rather than later. And in fact, given that we have Bart's attention, I would suggest that we do that with their permission, obviously, to access the property, but we do that, and access the records, that we do that right away as a first step, so that any additional consideration you might want to take would include the results of that review.
Okay, that would be good. And also, have we, and I don't recall ever doing it, but have we ever discussed with the residents on either side of the street or both sides of the street what their preferences might be? And if we haven't, maybe that would be a step in all of this, of what kinds of things they might like to see.
We have not engaged a formal public participation process. We have heard, and the council has previously had people who've generally given their opinion that there would be an interest for additional recreational opportunities, but I think the primary thing that I have heard over the years is an interest for a better and consistently maintained visual appearance of the property. There is also an interest within the neighborhood that I've heard having to do with additional, or the constraints on parking availability, and I would expect that to be a value of the neighborhood as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ken?
Is it me, or is there not an outward concern about a potential hazard, health hazard? If there's a prospect that there might be a contamination issue here or whatever, why isn't there, just go straight to the owner and say, take care of this now, before we even start discussing as far as any transition on it, because I can't imagine if I was living on that street. I mean, this is a new, for me, it's like a new development that there's a potential contamination, and it's like, why wouldn't it? Because it was at one time railroad tracks and stuff. So obviously there's some maybe petroleum spills or something or whatever. So I just thinking, isn't that, I mean, we're doing the cart before the horse here. Is that, shouldn't we be demanding a clearance of this property first before we even start seeing about transition or redevelopment of it?
So let me explain the recommendation better. Thank you for the question. First of all, staff is not aware and is not anticipating any type of public health hazard. So the short answer to your initial question is no, there is nothing that we are concerned about or that we have any information about that suggests residents of the neighborhood should be concerned. It is prudent and in property transactions for somebody who is acquiring a piece of property to be interested and concerned about what type of what is the status of the property, and in particular whether with open land there is any type of situation on the property that might require remediation should there be disturbance of the soil in a manner that would be necessary for development of the property for any type of additional use. Again, staff is not suggesting and has no information to suggest any type of concern about a public health hazard. It is prudent to undertake environmental review of any property prior to considering ownership of it, because you own the long-term liability of that, and there may be issues that you would need to know should you want to move forward with any type of physical development of the property.
Rico?
Sure.
Let me answer one more question that I don't think you asked, but maybe you implied. And the short question maybe is, why isn't BART doing that? Because they don't care. They're not doing anything with the property. They have no interest in it, and there is no, other than the city acquiring it at the city's interest, there's no need for anybody to do anything.
I'm searching for some question for the city attorney, that there might be some legal
I'm sure he's happy
vehicle
to
out
answer
there, that we can ask that question though.
I've been thinking of the answer to the question you haven't asked yet. I do think it's prudent to do an evaluation. Usually that happens either before there's any negotiations, or even sometimes during the escrow period there's a contingency for an inspection. I think in this case, unless there were some overt evidence that we already had, that there was seepage of contamination into the groundwater, for example, or those sorts of things, which we don't apparently have any evidence of, there really wouldn't be any basis to require the owner of the property to do anything unless they wanted to develop it themselves. So hence the staff recommendation to propose this sort of analysis before we make any further steps toward acquiring the property, if that's what you're interested in.
Just to close it out, we're satisfied that a phase one would answer a majority of our concerns?
Well, again, the city has no specific concerns as part of a due diligence to be able to advise you about whether the property would present a liability to us potentially down the road, and or there is any possibility of it being developed for any other use, or what it would take to develop it. This is an information gathering opportunity. Staff can't adequately predict whether a Phase 2 environmental review would be indicated until we have the results of the Phase 1 evaluation.
We don't necessarily have to do a phase 2. We could be cleared at phase 1.
You don't have to do anything in terms of environmental review. We would, or assessment, we would recommend that we go down that path as an information gathering, so that you're fully informed.
Through the chair.
There you go.
The city manager pointed out 2008 was brought up, and I think Scott Bushman might have been one of the gentlemen that stood before us and had brought this up at one point. And Vice Mayor asked about maybe the outreach to the residents, which I think is critical. They reminded me when I walked the area that they thought we had this in our preview of doing something. They kind of were telling me that you were bringing this up, that you were working on it. So I'm glad to see this come forward. So I will tell you what I have heard being out there is that they do feel the parking is an issue, as the manager indicated. That I know that BART is supposed to maintain it, they don't, the city does, and sometimes we don't get paid for it, or we don't at all. So in essence, we're already having money invested in there to not have it a blight, and that's just to obviously assist the residents, because who wants to live with that? So I think what you may hear is as far as parking and emergency vehicles going down that path, in addition to the cars that are not just on the sidewalk, they basically cover the sidewalk. And so I think that the residents, if we're able to do something, have been looking forward to it, as this gentleman has sitting here, and would love to see something go forward.
Okay. Anything else? The direction is?
I'd like to make a motion that the city manager go forward with the Phase 1 environmental review for that property.
Second. Yeah.
That was the motion.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second it, but I'd also like in the discussion.
Motion and a second on the question.
Okay. Can we at least, I mean, there's not a lot of residents there, so if we can get a notification, or at least a copy of the staff report, just to inform them that we are moving forward on some information on this.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor?
Through the chair, actually,
Michael?
before we vote, I just wanted to get a little clarification. And so the intent is that we move forward with at least considering purchasing the property, but acquiring.
We don't want to buy it. They should give it to us.
Okay, we're assuming it's up for grabs. And it does seem to make sense to me that the city should probably own, I mean, no other entity has any real interest in the property, and so probably the city should take ownership of it. But I think I personally would like to have a little bit better of an idea what we intend to do with it before we move forward with planning to purchase it. And I don't know what the rest of the council thinks about that. Maybe, I mean, we didn't really talk so much about, okay, what do we do with it if we do acquire it? So I'd like to hear maybe a little bit of discussion, or at least some ideas on what the rest of you have in mind for this property, should we come to own it.
I would think that the first thing we have to do is to make sure that, in fact, it's not some horrible, toxic mess. I think we have to approach BART, who has to approach Samtrans, and say this is what we'd like to do to get on solid ground. We want to make sure that Phase 1 environmental should pass, and if we have to go to Phase 2, I think we have discussions there. But I think we have to make sure that it's in fact safe to pursue further negotiations, especially with the neighborhood, as to what they'd like to see done with it. So I think, I don't want to speculate a lot on what we might be able to do with the property before we even know that the property is safe to do anything with.
So, just in terms of clarity, so I'll ask staff this: if we decided that we were going to acquire this and pave it over and just create more parking spots, would the environmental analysis have any bearing? Versus if we wanted to turn it into a playground.
I don't know for sure because I don't know for sure. Disturbing there's a couple of different issues. One is the use after improvement, and the other is disturbance of the soil that can have bearing on the answer to the question. And I'm sorry to say at this point, we don't really know anything about the property except that people are complaining about its appearance and have an interest in potentially putting it into productive use. So I think I would have to defer until we had at least a little bit more information.
I'm sorry, so pretty much the answer then is no matter what we do with it, there is a potential for, if there is something toxic there, that we would disturb it and cause an environmental issue, and so we would want to do that. I guess the other alternative is we just leave it alone, we just keep cleaning it, and in that case, then there is no potential for environmental?
Potentially, but then you own it. So, I mean, it's just,
So you
again,
wanna know
it's
what you own.
just
Okay.
a prudent recommendation for somebody who's acquiring a piece of property that has, let's just say, an industrial history and no recent information or analysis.
If I may just add through the chair, one of the complexities of this is that I think it's reasonable to assume that the owner of the property knows more about it than we do. So it's also possible the owner of the property, when we approach them to say, we'd like to do a phase one on your property, they might say, well, we're not so interested in that. Because were a phase one to show that there was contamination or a problem, they would then be responsible for actually doing something about it, irrespective of whether there's going to be development on the property. So I think that once we start the process, we should be able to figure out fairly easily what the interests of the owner of the property are in that regard, and we'll learn something about what they know, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
All right.
And I don't anticipate, if I could, I don't anticipate turning it all into a parking lot either. And I think the circulation issue is a big issue, so that they can at least park normally along a street and still maintain a good width of a street. You know, but then you're still going to be left with some separation there. You know, even no matter how wide, I think we make it.
Okay, just to clarify, I believe there's a motion on the floor with a second to talk to Bart about conducting a phase one environmental in our interest in potentially taking over the property. Is that correct? Okay. On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So carried. Item 12, comments from council members.
If I
Item
could,
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a little shout out to Public Services. Got a couple of calls in the last few weeks about some street lights that were out, and I took it upon myself to go onto the website, fill out the online description, punch send, and invariably every single time, even before 8 o'clock in the morning, I was given a response. Not necessarily how they're going to fix it or anything, but a response from staff. And so just to let the public know, if you have a street light out or if you have a dangerous pothole or something, there are services that you can report yourself and be assured that you will get a response. And I think that's a good service to have. And so thank you, Public Services. I anticipate getting an update on those streetlights, though.
Okay, anything else? All right, we're going to go into closed session. First item is conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, agency designated representatives, the city manager and human resources director, employee organization, miscellaneous bargaining unit, and police bargaining units. And the second closed session is a conference with real property negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is 105 Cabrillo Way, San Bruno. Agency negotiator is the city manager. Negotiating parties, the city of San Bruno. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment. The next city council meeting will be held right here on November 26, 2013 at 7 p.m. Meeting adjourned.